All right. Hey there, everyone. I'm going to attempt something that I'm not very good at, and that is going live. Uh, I've had an email or a message exchange going back and forth with a friend of mine talking about his interest in going out and exploring an area that he may want to try to do some research in that's close to where he lives. So I just asked him, since I don't have much experience going live, would he want to come on here and pose the questions in this format? That way, if I can say anything that would help not only him but anybody else that's looking for a way to go out and explore a new area for possible Bigfoot activity. Hey, Mark. Mark Roberts is on board. Mark, were you talking with the other Mark just a minute ago? All right, I have a couple of questions. So I can actually look at the questions. The gentleman who has the questions is the gentleman named Mark, who I just put the video out recently about his sighting and encounter on the military base in Arkansas. So all right, Mark. Yeah, I've got two Marks in the in the chat room, so I'm just going to Mr. Roberts and Mr. Wayland. But Mr. Wayland is the gentleman who has the questions. It looks like he's very interested in trying to find a spot close to where he lives. Bear with me, I'm on my phone. But Mr. Wayland, pose your first question. And I'm not going to hide the fact Mr. Wayland lives close outside of Oklahoma City, not too far outside of Oklahoma City. And I do have a video that involves a rock hitting a guy between the eyes. I believe that was close to Meeker. I think Meeker's a little southeast of Oklahoma City. So these little rural communities out in that area is basically what Mr. Wayland is going to ask me about, because there's some rivers and some lakes that he wants to pose some questions about how he can use. Okay, so his first question is what to use for casting footprints. And generally I have used plaster in the past, and it worked in its time, but it's not very stable. It'll break fairly easy. Plaster cast will. So I think the medium that's generally used now is hydrocal. You can purchase them in 25, 50-pound boxes. I keep a 25-pound box of hydrocal in the floorboard of my vehicle, and it's there just in case I come across some good tracks. So yeah, the hydrocal is definitely what I prefer to use. So you can look that up online. It has variable prices and who you purchase them from. I mean, you can get them from the large warehouses at a pretty reasonable price. But I wouldn't suggest anything less than a 25-pound box, because you'll use it up pretty fast. Mix it up at about a half ratio. So 1 scoop of the powder and the same amount of water. And of course you can dilute it more if you need to. But I think if you dilute it more so that it's more runny, it may pick up more details on the print itself, like possible dermals. But then again, it may take a little longer to dry. So you may have to experiment with it, find out, the best consistency for what you're looking for. But not, not plaster of Paris. No, that I don't think people are fond of using that anymore. It cracks and breaks. It takes a long time to dry. You can't get a lot of detail out of it. The hydrocal dries a lot harder and picks up more detail. So yeah, hydrocal. So the next question is, Mr. Wayland asked me about being armed. Yes, for you to be comfortable, you should be armed. As many times as I've been out, I've never come across a wild hog or a mountain lion or anything like that, but it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So you should be prepared. I mean, and to me, I don't think it makes a difference. The night I had my encounter at the Chickasaw Park, I had a pistol sitting on the seat beside me. So I haven't experienced anything that tells me that these things know you're armed or even care that you're armed. I mean, how many hunter stands do they encroach upon while a hunter is up there with a high-powered rifle or a rifle at all? So the patterns to me doesn't fit that they can tell you're armed or they can tell your intentions or anything like that. So I don't worry about those type of things. So if you need to have a sidearm that's easily accessible. So I don't think it needs to be concealed. I mean, have it at your ready, because you never know when something happens up close and in tight quarters and it bum rushes in quick, whether that be a wild hog or whatever. I mean, you need to have good, clean access to your firearm. So that shouldn't be an issue. I'd load yourself up with whatever you're comfortable with, because it's about whether or not you can stay comfortable, because I think it's your demeanor. The more armed you are, the more that you feel comfortable. Even if you're armed to the hilt, it changes the way you think. You're less afraid. You have confidence that if things get sketchy, you can take care of yourself. And I think it's how you feel that makes the biggest difference. It doesn't mean that they understand or can read your thoughts. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they can just see your behaviors are less sketchy. So, yeah, I mean, Mark, yeah, you said you've heard firearms could scare them off. They could, but a lot of times people just say things like that without any basis to any reality behind it. Because they also walk up close to people in tree stands that are armed. So which is the truth? Mark is asking about game cameras and IR. Anybody who's heard me talk about the game cameras and stuff knows that I've captured what I believe a few separate times pictures on game cams that I believe was a Bigfoot. And then what was said at the Sierra Sounds video audios, from the sounds up in the high Sierras, they were using game cameras not game cameras, but they were using cameras back then in the early 70s that were string triggers. So they weren't game cameras that we have today, which IR lights and all of these things. Back then, they were much more simpler cameras with just a string trigger that would set it off. So, and those cameras were avoided. and destroyed and left hanging in the trees in pieces. So why would those cameras be avoided, destroyed, ignored, whatever? And then our cameras today, the same thing, but yet they're two different types of cameras. So why do we assume that it's the IR and the other things that are involved with game cameras today and not another component? Could be that they're just plastic. Could be that they're, I mean, that they notice, that they see what you're setting up. It's hard to say. I just don't think it's the IR, and I don't think it's because, like I said, I've had IR cameras sitting on the table and had one, what I believe was one, come up, and I got a couple of pictures taken, and it was right in front of the camera, so it didn't see the IR, didn't sense the electronics, didn't sense the batteries. It was piled up with a bunch of other camping supplies on the table. So that tells me they can be tricked. And maybe it was the fact that it was a younger one. So, you know, so all of those components may play a part in this. Was it less experienced? You know, so yeah, but I don't think it's the IR. Matter of fact, I'm working with two cameras now where I've cut holes in logs and have surface mounted them inside the logs, you know, and kind of painted them up a little bit, trying to hide the cameras within a little log that I can, you know, set up with somewhat camouflage stuff. So yeah, as far as cameras goes, you should experiment with them. You know, clearly setting them on the side of a tree where they're easily visible doesn't have much success. So you might try something different from that. But other than that, I think the game cameras, you know, I think they're viable. We can get something with them. It just takes a lot of patience and strategy. Leah, hi. This is my first time doing a live in this format where I had a gentleman here who wanted to ask me some questions, and I could tell that we would be going back and forth in our messaging for the questions that he had. So I just thought maybe I'll just throw it up here on live and he can ask me the questions and I would answer them. So that's what I'm doing here. I don't think I have a big enough subscription base to make this a weekly thing. I mean, I love to answer any questions that I can, but I don't know. I also don't want to pop online and, you know, only have one person show up or 0 people show up. But I do like to answer questions. I mean, I think I've got enough experiences where I can give you reasonable answers to any questions that you have. But yeah, Mark, I would say hogs are an issue. I did thermal video a hog one time, and it was a lone hog all by himself. You know, normally you'd see hogs in a big family group, you know, rooting around in the woods or fields or whatever. But I thermaled one hog going through the woods one time, and I thought that was quite interesting. Thermal or night vision? Yes, yeah, I would say thermal. Back in the very beginnings when I was using night vision, whatever I could afford, I would buy. And I started out with those cheap $500 night visions that you could drop down over your eyes, and it had a head harness so that you were looking through them. And you know, back then it looked really military type thermal, but they're really not high quality. And then as I could afford more, I would get higher resolution or a Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, all the way up until way back then, I had like a $3,000 or a $3,500 scope, but it was night vision. And I've got to tell you, through all of that experiment with night vision, I wasn't satisfied because you still couldn't see past the foliage. And what I've learned since then is that the Bigfoots don't seem to change their behavior just because it's night. They're still going to use cover. They're still going to hide behind things. They're going to put things between you and them. So the thermal allows you to see past the foliage and look for heat behind the bushes and behind the foliage, where a thermal camera, an IR camera, night vision camera, stops at the foliage line. So it's not any better than looking in the daytime and how hard it is to see past the foliage line. So I would say save up the extra money and go ahead and go straight to thermal, because I think that's going to give you your best opportunity. Who knows? Maybe the IR glow in a log will pique their curiosity and look into it. You never know, especially if it's a younger one. An inexperienced younger one seems to be the ones, not only risk takers, but they just haven't lived their life long enough to learn what to avoid. So they're the ones that I do think that you're going to catch more than an adult Bigfoot. I just watched a guy I saw 1 month ago next to the Sierras. He's got a channel called Four Bandits. I'm going to have to check that out then. Hey, Bigfoot Truth. Hey, buddy, you guys got to have to bear with me. I'm trying to read through, and I'm going to try to do the best I can. Leah asked, how do you rate your fear level on the encounter at the Chickasaw Park? There's no comparison. I've never been as scared as I was that night. It from that moment on, it has gotten progressively easier and easier, and me better to handle it. Yeah, I don't even know how, when I say 1 to 10, I mean, it was off the charts. Like I said, if you've heard me tell the story, I think I was this close to having a heart attack, and you could have found me sitting behind the seat the next day, deader than a doornail, and they would have just wondered, oh, hey, this guy had a heart attack sitting in the seat of his truck, and they would have never have known why. Yeah, Bigfoot Truth. Bigfoot Truth concurs that yes, the leaves stop the infrared light. So yeah, you save your extra money and go ahead and just bump it on up to a thermal. And they're making thermals more affordable now. It's still not affordable, but more affordable than they were in the past. So yeah, gruesome twosome. Yeah, they do have very good little thermal monoculars that they're worth their money. It gives you the edge to be able to see past the foliage. Any collabs in the near future from Alex Lopez? Man, I appreciate that, Alex. I mean, when you say that you believe that I'm doing it the best I can. It's all relative and it's all subject to change. I will change my view in a heartbeat, given anything that happens. But I've got some things lined up. I'm going out within a couple of weeks back down to Oklahoma to that private property that I've been trying to meet up with the guy. And finally, we're going to be there at the same time. I'm hoping to get a key to the place and meet the guy, get a tour of the land, get all the stories from the land, and then have unfettered access to it. So I can't wait to do that. And yeah, so that's the collaboration that I'm going to be doing in the near future. But I am going to be doing some changes. And I'll tell you guys, the thermal camera sees through black plastic bags. So the black trash bags that you put into your kitchen trash, if the thermal camera is behind that plastic, it can see through it. In the past, I've made a box that sits on top of my tent where I run the thermal camera up and look through it. The only problem is the condensation. It didn't take long on colder nights for my condensation to come up out through that portal, and moisture would condense inside that box. And then all of a sudden, within just a matter of minutes, I'm having trouble seeing through the plastic because the condensation moisture from my breath and the heat coming up out of the tent was building up within that plastic container. So that was my only experimentation. It's a great idea. So I'm going to do that again, but this time I'm going to make the box open at the top. So it's basically just going to be sides so that whatever heat comes up in there just flows out the top. Because I believe I haven't been very successful with the thermal camera spinning on the rod sticking up out of my tent, and I believe it's because they can see it. they see it moving. I mean, they're that stealthy in their approach that they will be somewhat a distance from camp, watching camp. And if they ever see that thermal camera moving as I'm spinning it around, looking around, that's a deal killer. They probably don't come any closer once they see something moving. So I'm going to have it hidden behind black plastic, but now I'm going to have it open at the top so that the heat can dissipate and not create condensations on the walls. So I'm very excited about that, especially given what happened my last trip down there when I was down there for 5 or 6 days, and it was the very last day that I had a lot of activity. So it's very random. I mean, it couldn't know that that was my last day. So those are the things that I need to set up for another night like that, where there's something out vocalizing, throwing stuff, breaking branch. When you hear all that going on, I need to set up for another night like that. So that's why I'm going to get the black plastic bag container that runs my camera up. I'm also planning on specifically setting up my game camera behind the vehicle. Now, bear with me. Now that I'm satisfied with how I've got those game cameras surface hidden into the logs, and I can put branches into the logs. Remember, at the Chickasaw Park, when I had my encounter, one of the main components to that whole encounter was them moving in behind the vehicle, putting the vehicle between them and the tent. The tent is where the perceived danger would be for them getting discovered. So they kept themselves with a big object between them and the tent. That's big, because now that same component pops up over and over again. I just talked with a friend who was down at Brown Springs, down by Thackerville in Oklahoma, and he experienced something where they came in and used the Bigfoots used the vehicles, and they got handprints on the back of the vehicles where the vehicle once again was used for cover. Also, remember that video I put out about a Bigfoot using the creek to approach? That whole thing was set up because of a few weeks before, where a gentleman went to his vehicle to get into the vehicle, and on the back side of the vehicle in the reeds, there was a juvenile Bigfoot. So again, that's a third instance that I know of personally where a vehicle was being used as cover. So now I can't ignore it anymore. So I'm going to use one of these log cameras that's going to I'm going to move the vehicle a little further out and set it up in a way where it gives some distance from the tent, and it will be the natural blocker of something. And then I'm going to have that log camera set up on a brush line watching behind the vehicle. And I'm not going to deviate from that, because I've now seen enough patterns that a vehicle is being used as cover. So now I need to make that my focal point to having a camera watch the back of a vehicle, hidden as best I can hide it, and hope that when that happens again, I'm ready for it. That's the best I can do, is try to be ready when I start to see patterns. Okay, I know I haven't read anybody's question here in a minute, so let me. I'm heading to Big Cedar, Oklahoma next week for a few nights camping. Gruesome twosome, are you kidding me? I'm going to be close to there. Yeah. So are you going to be up by the Billy Creek campground stuff? Billy Creek trails? That's cool. Pyromedic, they make a good rifle scope that records for 800 now, so you can see all the way across fields. Yeah. Pyromedic, I watch those hog hunters with their thermals and stuff. Those things are awesome. Leah, Boykin Springs. I have to keep that in mind. Family has property in Cold Springs, planning a visit and going further east Texas. We'll look into it. Yeah, Bigfoot truth. Good scope, but not on a rifle. You're right. But wait a second. So you're saying you are a heavy breather, Randy? What? Yeah, Patrick, I've people keep sending me things, and I've seen those 360 look through deer blinds, but unfortunately those look through deer blinds are the same thing as the mirrored tint on windows, whether it be on your house or whether it be on a car. And that is, it needs to have light on one side and darkness on the other. Once it becomes dark, you can see through it or not see through it at all. It's one of those components where you have to have light on one side. That's why those blinds are so good in the daytime, because inside that it's darker and shadowy, but on the outside you're getting the reflection off the screen that you can see through. So there's some dynamics there that may not work. It could work for bigfooting during the day, but it wouldn't be so good for bigfooting during the night. Any key things to look out for when looking for a new area? Well, I mean, I can tell you, you're going to hear one before you see one. I mean, unless you're lucky. Unless you're super lucky, you'll see one. But more often than not, you will hear one. So your first piece of equipment, Mark, may have to be a parabolic, or the hunter's earbuds where you can hear better. And then you're going to have to work on some self-discipline. I mean, I'm not saying you don't have self-discipline, but I know it's something I've had to work on, and that is sitting silent. If you're in an area that you're checking out, it's so important to be able to hear what's going on 50 yards away, 100 yards away, even further. If they're moving around to try to figure out what you're doing, you got to be able to hear it. The only way to hear it is not only with enhanced hearing technology, but you yourself have to learn to be quiet. So really the only way that you can be quiet for an extended period of time is with a little headlamp on and reading a book. That has worked for me. It allows me to be quiet for a long time because I'm reading with a little headlamp on, which means from a distance, something can see you sitting there with the headlamp on. And with your enhanced hearing, you can hear what's going on around you. I don't know of any better situation than that right there, because the first thing you're going to have to do is hear that they are there to continue to your next step of research. Mark Roberts, discipline was out the window on my first Bigfoot outing. Yeah, Mark went out with me down in the Kiamichis on that same ridge where I've done all those videos about all the activity on that ridge. And yeah, we had a rock hit the vehicle in the middle of the night. Mark came unglued, and I'd already told him to don't get excited if something happens, and be calm, and we'll let the thermal camera pick it up and we'll see what happens. But man, the moment that rock hit the truck, Mark came unglued. But Mark's not a small fellow, and he was trying to sleep in the back of my truck. So he was eventually kind of wedged down off the seat into the floorboard, where he was kind of crunched in like a burrito. He was all smushed in there with his blankets on him like a burrito. So you can imagine a rock hits the truck, and it's very loud, and you can hear it bounce across the top of the truck. And dude came unglued, looked like he was trying to get out of a sardine can, and that truck was rocking. And you know what they say, if the truck's rocking, don't come knocking. So that's how that turned out. The Bigfoot left after that. I heard a branch break as it was leaving, and that was it. But it was an exciting few minutes. Oh yeah, pyromedic. It is hard to tell where the sound is coming from. You are correct. I haven't used a dish on my parabolic since I've gotten them. I like to just leave the mic laying out where it picks up sound 360 degrees around. And you're right, you can't get a direction, but the reasons that I'm using it is because I first need to hear that something's around. I don't need to specifically hear where the sound is coming from. And if you start using a parabolic to point it in different directions, who knows what that means to them? If they see you turn it in their direction, is that something that they're going to try to be evasive about? I don't want them to see me reacting at all to the sounds that I'm hearing. I just want to hear it, and I like to let them play out, because I want to see what they're doing, or I want to hear what they're doing, and I want to hear how they communicate with each other. And I'm afraid to alter that in any way. I don't want to alter that, because the moment I alter it, they either go into more hiding, more evasive, but the more they communicate with each other and do things, and I don't respond, I'm just still reading my book and I'm just listening. I'm like, okay, I one just knocked right over here, one did this, and I enjoy that process. But man, the moment you can tell that you're aware of the sounds being made and you maybe turn a parabolic in their direction, that has a tendency to slow things down and even shut things down. These things are absolutely aware. So we got to play dumb. You got to play dumb. You got to play like you're not hearing it, like you don't understand that it's not a nighttime sound, and let them just keep doing what they're doing. Because I think the reason they do things the way they do with nonverbal communications is because they think they're being stealthy by not using vocals. So if they think they're being stealthy, let them think they're being stealthy by not acknowledging anything that they do. That way they'll keep doing it. All right, I'm going to scroll back up and see if I missed anything. Our glow, Randy will like to. Yeah. Well, honestly, Randy, I am on a private. Big Truth says I'm on a private property, on my own property, when I'm interacting with this one in particular. But when I hear it, I let it know very casually that I heard it, and it likes my responses. Yeah, I mean, and as you know, buddy, that comes with long-term, getting to know each other when they know you're around. I mean, I've benefited from that also, when I was putting out the picture with the baits and all that stuff. So yeah, there's certain degrees of familiarity that you can take advantage of, and clearly you've done that. So Mark says, one scenario I'm thinking about trying is floating sections of the river, and he mainly observing and looking for tracks, that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, that's a great technique, especially if you can float it at night. I mean, floating it during the day, sure. Stopping at every sandbar, stopping at every crossing, stopping at every place that you can look for footprints. That's a great tactic. Floating at night might even be better. But yeah, I haven't gotten to do that. Most of the floating either involves kayaks or canoes, and I am not willing to take any of my equipment on small, unstable boats like that. I do have an opportunity coming up where a gentleman reached out to me with a houseboat who wants to know if I want to research Lake Ouachita, which is north of Hot Springs, Arkansas, and he lives in Hot Springs. So I'm going to try to work on being able to work that lake, using a houseboat. That would be fantastic, because then I could fly the drone off the houseboat too. All right. Yeah, clearly Bigfoot Truth has got a lot of stuff going on there. You guys might want to check out his stuff. Well, I mean, if there isn't any more specific questions, I mean, I really don't know what else I can say other than this just being a Bigfoot chit chat. But just give me a couple of weeks. I'm going to be putting another video together when I go down there. I mean, I got some plans for this equipment and setting the equipment up a certain way. I'm going to use one of the logs with the tent that I use the Japanese language. Now I'm going to have a hidden log with a camera somewhere outside the perimeter of that tent also now. So that's going to be an added component to the Japanese. So I'm still going to do the Japanese language tent and have a log camera set up out there. But I'm going to have to put this all together on the next trip, all of these techniques, give it a few nights to play out. And it's going to be on that property where the four-wheeler was found up in a tree. So the owner seems to think that I should be sketched out about what's going on there. I just told him we'll wait and see. He said it's a very oppressive when you go in there. It's just, you can just feel the oppression. And I'm like, I dig it, man. I like it. All right, Leah, appreciate you stopping by. We'll chat with you later. All right, Big Truth, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and sign out. If you got any more questions, you guys know you can send me a message. I hope I answered them for you, but I can't wait to hear your Mark Whalen's getting out and trying out that area up there. So yeah, you better report back to me, because I might have to come down there and visit too. All right, now let me figure out how to get out of here. Goes to show you how bad I am with this. I don't even see a stop button. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, bye.